The White House claims that Sunday's launch of that medium-range ballistic missile violated a United Nations Security Council because that missile could be fitted with a nuclear warhead. Iran says, no, not a nuclear missile. That was a conventional missile, and therefore it does not violate the United Nations Security Council resolution. The president, though, in response to that, tweeted, quote, Iran is playing with fire. They don't appreciate how kind President Obama was to them. Not me. Short time ago at the White House briefing, Sean Spicer, the press secretary, said this could be the first of many actions if Iran continues to misbehave. Here he is.
Today's sanctions really represent a very, very strong stand against the actions that Iran has been taking and make it very clear that the deal that they struck previously was not in the best interest of this country, and that President Trump is going to do everything he can to make sure that Iran has stayed in check.
During the election campaign, both the primary and the general, then candidate Donald Trump vowed that he would undo the Iran nuclear deal, but he didn't want to just go in and completely rescind it on day one like a lot of other candidates Sandra had vowed to do, because he wants to make sure that he gets a better deal. So that will probably unfold in the days and weeks ahead. Sandra?
All right, it may be Friday, but it was still another busy day for the Trump administration. John Roberts, Mr. Trump also issuing more executive orders today, 2 of them. What can you tell us about them?
You know, a lot of people were happy to see him take off for Florida so we could catch our breath for a couple of hours. Signed 2 executive orders. One delays the implementation of the so-called fiduciary rule at the Department of Labor. This is a rule that a lot of people wanted implemented because it elevates the level of responsibility for anybody who is selling anything to do with finance, financial advisors, other things like that. But the president insists that this would reduce the number of choices that consumers have and also increase the cost of those services as well. So he doesn't want that thing to be implemented. So he signed an order that would delay or absolutely eliminate its implementation altogether. Also signing another executive order that states a period of 120 days, sets out a period of 120 days to review a lot of the regulations that were put in place following the near financial collapse back in 2009. He believes that these regulations have severely limited businesses and individuals access to money, most of it through loans, so that they can grow their businesses, buy houses, things like that. Gary Cohn, you saw him standing just to the right of the president there, is the director of the Council of Economic Advisors. Here's what he said about all that this morning.
All banks have been under such regulatory scrutiny where they've been forced to literally build capital, and instead of lending capital into their clients and allowing their clients to grow their businesses and hire people and create jobs, they've been taking those reserves and they've been taking that capital and hoarding it to meet the regulatory requirements and pay for additional regulation.
The president has also vowed that he will repeal Dodd-Frank and replace it with something else, but that, too, is for down the road, though the president's bound to keep us busy. You know how that goes, Sandra.
Of course. John Roberts, thank you for all your reporting. Busy
Thanks.
week. All right, for more on the administration's movements today, let's bring in Simon Rosenberg, president and founder of the New Democrat Network and a former campaign advisor for President Clinton, and Katie Pavlich, townhall.com editor and Fox News contributor. Katie, I'm looking down at your Twitter feed because you are so active on there and you have so many followers. You are very busy tweeting about Iran and the happenings today and these sanctions. Yep. Explain to us, what do you make of them?
Well, look, I think that it's very clear that the Iranians wanted to test the new administration and President Trump in their actions, but this is not something that's new for the Iranians to be testing the Americans. We've seen for a long time now, especially in the last year, the Iranians threatening to shoot down U.S. planes in international airspace. We saw them take our sailors hostage and then use videos of them as propaganda, which is against the Geneva Convention. And so I'm glad to see an administration that is treating the Iranians as the terror-sponsoring state that they are. And the interesting thing that came up today in the press briefing is that Sean Spicer indicated this is not just a response to the ballistic missile test, which violates UN resolutions. It's not just a response to Iran's attack on our ally, the Saudis in the Red Sea, but it's also a response to the continued funding of terrorism, which has been roundly ignored for far too long.
And we shouldn't be surprised by this, right, Simon? I mean, because we saw Michael Flynn take to the microphone at the start of the week Iran is officially on notice. Do these sanctions go far enough? We just had Marie Harf, former deputy press secretary in the Obama administration in the State Department, and she said these appear to be the same kind of sanctions we in the Obama administration put on Iran over its missile program.
Yeah, listen, I think it's okay for the administration to go slow, right? I mean, they're still finding their way in the early days. They don't have their whole team in place. I think this was an appropriate step, but I also want to I hope that what we hear out of the administration in the coming weeks is clarity on strategy for the entire region, not just for individual pieces of it. So, for example, this week, in the last few weeks, we've angered our Iraqi allies in the region who are fighting side by side with us against ISIS. And I think that we've got to figure out how all these pieces fit together to make sure that we're achieving our ultimate ends, which is defeating ISIS, containing Iran, and all the other things that we want to do together. And I hope that the administration takes their time to develop that strategy in consultation with Congress and other parts of the government.
Katie, I want to get this in here because this is breaking right now. Michael Flynn just putting out a statement on Iran, saying the international community has been too tolerant of Iran's bad behavior, to the point that we heard from the president earlier today, saying that they just haven't been behaving. He said the days of turning a blind eye to Iran's hostile and belligerent actions toward the United States and the world community are over.
Yeah, and I think they're probably serious about that. Look, as I mentioned at the beginning of the segment, Iran for a long time has been engaging in provocative activity against the United States and our allies in the Middle East. Not to mention, Iran regularly funds Hezbollah, which is the largest terror organization in the world, and before 9/11 was responsible for more American deaths than any other terrorist organization in the world as well. And so for them now to say, look, we're done with tolerating these repeated violations of UN resolutions, we're done with acting like the Iran nuclear deal got the United States anything but bad behavior from the Iranians. And yes, President Trump has said, and said as a candidate, he doesn't want to necessarily tear up the deal, but it certainly can be amended, and we can certainly hold the Iranians accountable for continuing their bad behavior on a number of fronts to push these types of conflicts into the U.S. and global sphere of having to deal with them.
And Simon, I want to get Lindsey Graham's recent comments on Iran in here, because he is basically saying this is all a big test of the Trump administration. Listen to this.
Yeah, I don't know what that means other than it sounds strong. Here's what I would do, is I would try to rally the world to punish Iran through sanctions. I don't want a war with Iran, but they deserve to be sanctioned. They're testing President Trump. The Russians are testing President Trump.
Simon, your thoughts?
Yeah. Listen, it would be better to have a global coalition than acting unilaterally. I think that Lindsey Graham is correct about that. One of the reasons we were able to get the Iran nuclear deal, whether you thought it was a good deal or not, was because there had been punishing sanctions done in concert with our allies for a long period of time. And so I think what's important is for us to act with our allies, with Congress, to do this together. And one of my great concerns, frankly, about the early days of the Trump administration is their willingness to sort of do things out of the White House without significant consultation with even members of their own party. It would be better if we did this together than to did it alone. I think it will be more effective in whatever the president decides to do.
By the way, bringing this full circle back to your Twitter account, Katie, the last thing you tweeted was military force against Iran is on the table.
Yeah, Secretary Sean Spicer today said that, look, we're not talking about taking military action, but President Trump doesn't take anything off of the table. So that certainly means that they're not, as I said, taking it off the table, and it is an option. Yeah. And he also reiterated that President Trump, doesn't want to talk about what he's going to do because he thinks that's a bad strategy.
All right, Simon and Katie, thanks for being here.
Sure.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, well, El Chapo appears in a